Hello and welcome. My name is Raj Persaud. I'm a consultant psychiatrist based in Harley Street, London, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Roxana Cardos. Roxana Cardos is a psychologist who works in business, I think does some executive coaching, and is a coach. So, Roxana, very welcome indeed to the program. One of the things that you're very interested in the ways that you work as a coach is to focus on people's strengths. Tell us a bit about what you mean about people's strengths.
Okay. Hi, everyone. First of all, thank you so much for having me here. I take a positive psychology approach to working with people because I believe that everyone is good at something, but maybe they don't know it. So it takes a bit of time to bring it from the unconscious mind to the conscious mind. What do I mean by a strength? These are things that you are good at, you do them often, and they give you energy. And everyone has them, but not everyone has discovered them.
So what are your strengths? And then we may discuss some of my strengths. But what are your strengths?
Well, unlike personality, they change depending on how often you use them. So if you overuse them, for example, they stop being a strength and maybe they're a learned behavior. So the trick is to do something just like a muscle. So if you go to the gym and you work the same muscle over and over again, you might end up having a sore muscle. You need to give it a break. So I think at the moment, some of the things that I'm enjoying and I find them to be my strengths are explainer. So explaining a lot of things, being in the spotlight. I run quite a few webinars and classes face-to-face as well. Influencing. So I'm really fighting the corner for my ADHD entrepreneurs and really hoping to change people's perspective on how they're being seen. So I think there's a lot of negotiation in there as well, which I really enjoy being the devil's advocate. And the list goes on because I've been working with this for like over 5 years now. So I really understand like what it takes to move something from being something that drains you into something that energizes you. So I'm just going to stop here.
Okay. So, Roxana, give us an example in a consultation where you might use the whole strengths idea in a consultation. Tell us a bit more about that.
It's very varied. It could be anything from helping students choose a career to working with entrepreneurs and taking the business to the next level. So, example, I have an entrepreneur coming to see me because they reached burnout. And typically, this is because they are doing things that drain them or they're doing them for way too long. So we would take a profile, for example. So my preferred one is strengths profile. I think I told you before. And we would really understand what's draining him or her and what are the things that still give him or her energy, which means that we would need to rethink. And I can give you an example. I'm dyslexic. So when I first started working with this, I wasn't surprised to see that writing was a weakness. At the moment, it's a learned behavior, which basically means that I don't enjoy it when I do it, but I still have to do it. So like it's okay. It's no longer a weakness. And the way that I've done that, which I would do something similar with an entrepreneur as well, would be let's see which other strengths do you have, so things that give you energy that we can pair up with this weakness that we discovered or this thing that drains you that could help you. So in my case, it was mission. I was like really strong in what I wanted to put out into the world and like to make a change and an impact. So the mission overrode the fact that I'm not really good at writing because of my dyslexia. So it motivated me enough to move it from something that was low capability into high capability. And this is an example of me, but like obviously with a client, we would look specifically what are the things that drain him or her and led them to burnout, and what systems can we put in place based on the things that give them energy.
So when you say gives you energy, another word for that would be things that people are enthusiastic about.
Yes, you know that task that once you finished it, like maybe you get like really heated up in a conversation, and at the end of that you feel like, oh, I could have gone on, I could have like spoke for 2 more hours, it wasn't a problem. That's what I mean, like that gets you in the flow, that really leaves you wanting more. So like you don't feel drained at the end of the day, you actually feel energized at the end of the day.
So could you say a bit more about, people obviously come to you because they have a problem of some description or something they want to develop further, how you link the strengths back to the problem? Could you say a bit more about that?
Yes. So, I mean, they don't necessarily need to have like a clear problem. Sometimes they don't know what they don't know. They come to me and they talk they say that they want to make more money, but actually they want to find more satisfaction in what they're doing, for example. But how I link this is I work very strongly with positive psychology. So it's all about internal motivation, intrinsic motivation. So what are the things that motivate you and give you energy? Because if you're going to do that more, you're more likely to put in the extra hours and not feel drained at the end of the days, or you're more likely to do better quality job. So the way that I link it to whatever they want to discuss is think about it as engines. So instead of just having one engine that powers your goal, you can have 5 engines that power your goal. And an example would be someone that has, for example, as an unrealized strength, creativity, but they're an accountant, right? So like they want to go to the next level. We would have conversations around how can we use creativity in your day-to-day job. And it could be something about, okay, I'm going to be creative and innovative at the same time, and I'm going to develop a system that's going to make accounting more simple. I don't know. So this is just an example. Basically, it's a unique wiring. Everyone has different set of strengths, and the way that they put them together is based on the experience that they had so far. And it's about working together in partnership and see how can we bring it to life and how we can implement it going forward.
So, do you think we live in a world where it's very rare? Because I'm already feeling energized just talking to you. Got a positivity about you, because you're
Thank you.
focusing on strengths. And but do you think we live in a world where people are usually very negative to each other, and we get very little encouragement and very little dwelling in conversations about strengths? We tend to experience the world as full of criticism of ourselves. What are your thoughts about that?
I think that bad is stickier than good. So we need to work twice as hard to make the positivity stick. And I think media is not helping at the moment. Like we're being scared, so we're being activated, like in almost like in our survival mode, and we're trying to protect ourselves. And it's like inertia, right? Like once you start doing something, it's easier to continue. I work a lot with the reticular activation system. So once you tell your brain that something is important to you, it's going to show you more and more opportunities of putting that into action. So I definitely believe that the media at the time being is hooking us and giving us like that prime to be a bit more negative. And then if you don't actively work in controlling your thoughts and where your energy goes, it's very easy for you to be dragged in the wrong direction. So as a whole, I would say that you can make a very clear difference between people that actively work on themselves, and the people that just go with the flow, and whatever information comes at them, they're just taking it in and putting it out there again.
Okay, so I did warn you beforehand that I can get a bit challenging, so you have to brace yourself
Go
and
ahead.
strap yourself in for that. So this statement you make, which is incredibly positive and charming and slightly endearing, very endearing, that everyone's got strengths, right?
Yes.
As a psychiatrist who's met a broad range of people, I don't know whether I'm suffering from burnout. I think I've met some people who seem to have no strengths whatsoever. So why do you say everyone's got strengths? That's a rather sweeping statement. What's the basis for that idea? I agree that some people are better at some things than others, but to put it as a strength, I don't know whether that's overdoing it. Why are you so positive about people and you believe that everyone's got strengths? That's a really interesting statement.
I've never been asked that before. I think like the positive psychology school like believes in this. Like it's the fundamental principle that we work from. And I also see that, for example, I like a lot of stimulation, and I used to struggle in the beginning many years ago when I would be with someone that I would find, quote, boring. Like, what am I going to have a conversation with them about? And changing my perspective in this, that everyone is interesting, everyone has something that they could talk about, really made all my conversations engaging. And it's all about finding like what are they good at or what they enjoy. Indeed, like with some people, you have to dig a bit deeper, like depending if they had trauma or if they have like really like negative self-talk to themselves. But there's no such thing that you can't get it to the surface. And I would say that probably people that opt for coaching are a different kind of people versus the people that come and see you for psychiatry. So in general, people that come to see me, they are more focused on the future rather than on the past.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a different group, and I think there's a sense in which business psychology, which I would argue is kind of the area in. By definition, people coming to have coaching must have been successful at some point or some stage in their lives. Otherwise, amongst other things, they wouldn't be employed and they wouldn't be able to afford it. So somewhere success has to have occurred to
Yeah.
allow for the engagement. I also think I made the challenge, but I think that one of the things that's required in this work that you do, and to some extent that I do, is an optimism about the human spirit. So no matter how tragic some people's lives have become, I'm always very impressed at some of the difficult things they've done. And so I do think that's quite important to be something that you carry with you in this work. But interestingly, people can get burned out doing this work. I mean, Freud himself famously said, people are trash, which suggested that he was suffering from burnout. So what are your thoughts about that? That in the work that we do, coaches and so on, you would have talked to other coaches, they find it a bit relentless sometimes and a bit difficult to stay positive about people, I think. What do you think?
You said a lot of things there that I want to pick on, but I'm going to answer your question. So you're asking me about what other coaches are saying as well in terms of staying
I'm
positive
asking
about
you
this.
first of all, do you agree that there has to be some kind of philosophy that takes you into this journey of being a coach? And part of that philosophy is a belief in the human spirit. You've got to believe in something about people. You've got to be positive about people. And where does that positivity come from?
Well, I believe that it all goes back to why you started and why do you want to do this, right? There's a greater purpose of any act that you're doing, be it a webinar, be it a class, be it a coaching session, a group session. So I almost see that I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek's work, where the why is in the center, then how is like your strengths, what are you going to use from what you have, and then the what is the last thing. So I really believe that for everyone, the reason why they're doing it is different. For me, it's very different compared to you, probably. Like we have different things that motivate us to do that. Ultimately, to answer the question around the quality of people, I do discover with time that I need to have filters in getting to the right people, because it's a pleasure to work with people that I resonate with, and we have like similar values, or like we just click, versus the people that I don't click with. So I haven't lost faith in people.
Yeah. So let's talk about how you figure out what people's strengths are, because I think sometimes people themselves don't know what their strengths are. I have a feeling that you have a good intuitive feel just from talking to people in a short period of time, that you can give them some feedback about strengths they may not be aware of. When you go to a dinner party or a cocktail party or meet people, do you develop very rapidly an antennae for what their strengths might be? So you could tell them what they are without them having to fill out a questionnaire or an instrument? What's your sense of that?
Yes. But it depends if they display it, right? Because the way that you recognize the strength is when someone just lights up when they talk about it. So you could tell that I really love talking about this because there's a lot of volume in my voice, like there's a lot of expressions on my face, versus if we're going to talk about numbers, probably my body language is going to change altogether. So at a dinner party, especially once you get the baseline, so like you understand, because there's some culture differences as well and there as well, as you change the topic from politics to science to, I don't know, religion, you're able to see like different engagement levels. So at the end of the night, if you would ask me like which area do you think they succeed in, I would be able to tell you a few of their strengths, because as you know, at a dinner party, for example, there are always going to be some people that are going to be more extroverted versus the ones that are going to listen. So I would need a bit more time, for example, to spot like the introverts, because they tend to listen more. So they have the strength of listening. And then when they say something really impactful, versus someone that's used to having the stage all the time and they want to influence and they want to be the center of attention. So I'm able to spot this. And I particularly like to use this when I'm encouraging people. So when they say, oh, I'm not good at anything. And then I said, no, I've just seen you be a great explainer. I've just seen you influence. I've just seen you being comfortable in front of other people. So there's already 3 things that you're good at.
So this notion that people light up when you find the right subject, that they get engaged, I think it's a really interesting thing, right? And there's a sense in which I know we're entering maybe slightly dodgy territory, but slap me down if I am. And there's a sense in which, because I'm very interested in another notion that's quite close to what we're actually talking about, which is the notion of seduction. I don't mean seduction in a narrow erotic sense of the word, but in a wider sense of cultivating people's interest and desire, so they desire to be with you or have a conversation with you. So this notion that people light up, this is quite tricky in an art, and people are not very good at this. in conversation, and it's almost like they're not even looking to do it in a conversation. I think the purpose of a conversation is precisely to find the thing that creates engagement in the other person. Now, I think where you and I are similar because of our professions is once another person has got engaged, right, we get engaged. We want them to be engaged, if you see what I mean, right? So any thoughts about how to find that area, going back to how to find strengths in a conversation? For many ordinary people listening to this are not coaches. Any thoughts about how you can encourage them? Because it's very important in the art of conversation to have conversations that orientate themselves towards this moment when people light up and they engage, I think. And I'm interested in the art of how to do that, or subtly, or maybe not so subtly. Obviously, the not so subtle thing, just to say to people, what are your strengths, right? And you can do that as a therapist or a coach. It's more difficult to do that at a dinner party. You can still do it. It's a slightly weird question, though, at a dinner party. But
I have a challenge then for people listening to us in spotting strengths in other people. Maybe they could just retrieve it from their memory. It doesn't need to be at a dinner party, but really think about one person and try to reimagine them. So like replay it in your head. Sometimes when they spoke about something that was challenging to them, sometimes there was something that was excited them about it, and really notice the body language, because once you pay attention to that, it just gives it away. People, like the light up definition would be they talk faster, they use more hands, so like more gesticulation, their face expressions, and you can't shut them up. So everyone has a subject that you can't shut them up. That's a strong indicator that that's their area where they light up, versus where they just have things that they rehearsed and they have like a few sentences, maybe doing some lip service, depending what we're talking here about, and then that's it.
Yeah, so that's a really good tip. If you can't get a word in edgeways, you've hit upon conversational gold, and you're in the territory of their strengths. So that's a good guide. But also, you've got to be able to be willing to listen, and you've got to be willing to appreciate the fact the other person's engaged. That's a thing that many ordinary people don't have. They're not
emotional
able to
intelligence.
Yeah, but what are your thoughts about that? I mean, as a coach, you have to be able to do that. A surprisingly large number of coaches also find it quite difficult to be quiet for long enough, I think, and psychotherapists as well. But what are your thoughts about that bit? The bit that you provide a facilitating, comfortable listening environment for people to talk about their strengths or be in the area of their strengths.
At the dinner party or in the coaching session?
And any situation that people find it difficult to allow another person to talk. A large part of a conversation is to be encouraging and to appreciate the other person going on and you can't get a word in edgeways. In other words, we're talking about how to get, when people are passionate about something, to allow them to be passionate without finding that boring or wanting you to get your oar.
Yes.
There's something about that. As a psychiatrist, I appreciate it when people are passionate about something, but not many people do. They think they're selfish in conversation, I suppose, is the point I'm groping towards trying to make.
I agree. So I think it takes a bit of training to be able to fully be able to be present in the conversation and allow for the space, particularly when someone hits a subject that you're not interested in. I think for me, the coaching school, I've done 2 of them so far, really helped me in finding what's interesting for me in their story without changing the subject. So there's I'm more interested in what motivates them, right? So regardless if you're going to talk about rocket science, psychiatry, or you're going to talk about flowers, I'm really going to try to understand, okay, so what really interests you about this? What got you started? So that way we stay with the conversation. Of course, I can stay with technical as well for a while, particularly if they're a good explainer and they know how to keep my attention. But if not, probably I'm going to have a dialogue and also but obviously my questions. We're not talking about a coaching session here, we're talking outside of the coaching session.
Tell us a bit more about how coaching works and how a coaching session works, because again, it's a bit different from therapy and it's a bit different from an ordinary conversation. And a lot of people might be surprised that often coaches are not necessarily giving advice so much as asking questions. Tell us a bit about that bit, for example.
Yeah, so pure coaching would just involve me asking questions and giving the space for you to say what you want to say and repeat back. So just giving you the space for you to verbalize some of the thoughts, because some people are better at processing when they talk with other people. It could also be coaching with mentoring, which means that I could ask for permission. Like, would you like me to recommend a few strategies, and then I can reference books for you to further read, or I can explain to you, and then you try. Particularly with the ADHD coaching, this is moving away from the pure coaching when you don't say anything. I have to introduce them to different strategies. But if we would stick, for example, with pure coaching, the difference between counseling and coaching on the same topic, for example, let's say perfectionism. So someone is a perfectionist. If you would go to see a counselor, you would have a look at the root of that, and where is that coming from, and like really understand and really getting an awareness of, maybe, I don't know, I'm just going to say some things here. I'm not saying it applies to everyone, but maybe you've been criticized as a child from your parents, or like you really tried to do everything perfect in order to get the praise and attention from your family. Me as a coach, I don't care about that. So if you would come and see me about perfectionism, my question would be like, what would you like to change about this? And you would tell me, I would like not to be a perfectionist. And then I ask, okay, if you don't like to, if you don't want to do that, what do you want to do? And then they tell me what they want to do, and then we just work in the future. So I don't care what your mom said to you. I don't care how many times you've done it in the past. I only care, where do you want to go? And then it's about, let's find the way to get you there. And this is really helpful, particularly in the business context, because you're so busy all the time, yet you don't stop to think, what are you actually trying to achieve? And sometimes you just get engaged in for the sake of getting engaged, and you're on the wrong track, or something like that. So in the coaching session, you would get a chance to really think about what you've done so far, and readjust if you need to go in a different way, and also ask for advice if you're stuck, where I could give you mentoring advice.
So, give us some examples of the kind of things people come to you with and want coaching for. What are the kind of issues that arrive in the coaching session?
Starting a business and not knowing how to take off the ground, already having a business and wanting to go to the next level. Like, one of the typical things that I see is that what got them to this level of success is not what's going to take them to the next level. So they want to take that leap. They are burnt out, overwhelmed. They can't cope with everything around them. So like the work-life balance, it goes on. Or maybe they're just exploring. They have a successful business, and they're missing satisfaction, and they're like, what am I going to do? Am I just going to sell everything and do what? So I think it varies.
Could you give us an example of the kind of journey? Obviously, you may have to anonymize it, of someone who came with an issue, what happened in the coaching session, and then what produced personal change, or what change then occurred, so that they had a positive outcome from the coaching example. It doesn't have to be that specific, but a rough idea of what it would look like, a successful coaching outcome.
Would you like me to give you an example of ADHD coaching or pure coaching?
Whichever one. Let's go with pure coaching first, then we'll do the ADHD thing, because I want to get onto that subject in a minute.
Okay. Someone that was having a full-time job at a really famous company, I'm not going to give any names, in London, was describing the job as being in a golden cage, but wasn't having any satisfaction at work. And they wanted to do something else, but they didn't even know where to start. And like, through coaching, really unlocking some of the desires, where they want to go, we were able to get them to start their own company, although it meant a paycheck cut, which obviously means that we had to remove some of the blocks and some of the beliefs, and we had to reprioritize. So what would you like? Would you like to live a meaningful life? But maybe on a different scale, or would you like to live an empty life in this case? So everything is going to look perfect from the outside, but on a day-to-day basis, you're not going to be that happy. And this relationship continued, because obviously, like, once you start to have your own business, there are like different challenges, and it's really helpful to have a body double, right? So I keep them accountable. I check in on them, like, to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, or I play back to them some of the fears that they said, and I listen for their internal monologue. So I was able, like, to catch different things. So I almost feel part of the business right now, the one that he started, and it's actually getting close to the job that he had in the golden cage, in terms of revenue as well. But in the beginning, he had the courage to let go of that and start from scratch, and take the risk. So obviously especially when you have a mortgage that you need to pay, and you have kids, these are some like risky decisions, but ultimately like you have to make that transition, and having someone there to empower you to do that. So I'm not telling them what to do, but I'm helping them find the strengths within them and the motivation within them, and the strategies. It's really helpful.
So I think a lot of human problems or human issues, and I know coaching is different to therapy, are about this point, about people feeling stuck, people feeling
Hmm.
scared, people have a strong
Hmm.
emotion of fear, and believing that the emotion is blocking them. They have belief systems about the unpleasantness of the emotional
Yeah.
state that leads them to believe they can't do something. And one of the issues, I'm
Yeah.
interested in your opinion on this, I see over and over again is trying to have a conversation about the difference between an emotion, I feel I can't do this, to I really can't do this. So always like to use graphic analogies. If you're in a wheelchair and you ask, can I get to the top of Mount Everest? I would have to say, I'm sorry, basic physics means probably not while you're in a wheelchair. So that's an example of someone can't do something. And the reason you can't is physics is involved. Someone who arrives at the bottom of Mount Everest and is not in a wheelchair and says, I feel I can't get to the top of Mount Everest, is expressing a very different idea. Their emotional state as they look up to the top of Mount Everest is one where they feel daunted by the prospect, and a feeling has occurred within them, right? So this very basic distinction between a feeling and a belief or knowledge about the truth, what's a fact, feelings become facts in many people's minds. So do you
Yeah.
have that experience, and how do you tackle it? Because I think it's a really difficult problem to tackle. I
Yeah.
mean, as a
There's
psychologist, we're trained to understand the difference between an emotion, for example, and a thought, things like that. But people are very confused about that area. Anyway, what are your thoughts? I interrupted you. Sorry.
there's two reasons why someone wouldn't want to climb that Everest mountain. One, the incentive is not strong enough, and two, as you said, the belief that they hold is holding them back. So I think first of all we would have to identify like which is more rewarding and to work, and which one is going to give us quickest, like the quickest result in getting there. And then we would need to check if they want to change, because let's say we see that their father died in an Everest, like trying to climb Mount Everest. It would make a lot of sense for them not to want to push through that fear, unless there's a really really strong incentive to do that. So like for me it comes back to the why, like what is the benefit of them doing that, and why should we push them? So if they come and they say I want to do this, then like we proceed and we find different strategies. But it, for me, it comes back to the why, like where is this going, like why is this important to you? Because if it's something that's important to you, we can find a way. But if you can have anything but not everything, right? So like we really need to understand what is the reason why you're not doing that, and choosing that, as you said, it's a choice if you're going to climb or if you're not going to climb, or at least try, right? Because I think in your example there's people that already decided that I'm not going to be able to do it because I feel I can't do it, so they don't even try.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you would say, well, why do you want to climb it in the first place? And then the patient might say, or the client might say, well, I think it's a good idea to climb it, but I just can't do it. So I would do the thing about, well, then don't climb Mount Everest, right? I would, the Socratic questioning is to go through the implication of the patient's point of view, okay? And then you get into a loop, because the patient then goes, well, my life's not worth it if I can't do this thing. And then we come back to, well, maybe you ought to do the thing. And then they go, I
I see.
feel I can't do the thing, right? So you get trapped in an intellectual loop where they're not seeing a couple of things. They're not seeing, for
Yeah.
example, that just because you feel you can't do something doesn't mean you actually can't do it. That bit, I think, your clients, you seem to find it easy to get them to see the difference between feeling something and knowing something. They
Well,
believe feeling is knowing. In a lot of the clients that I see.
I think for what I would ask them, so would you like to climb Mount Everest? And they say, I feel I can't do it. I would ask them, what would it mean to you to be able to do that?
Oh,
Can you
brilliant
think of
question. Brilliant
can you
question.
think of anyone else that has done this? Like
Mhm,
how did their life change? So I would anchor them more in the success and
mhm,
in the reason. So let's say Diana did this as well and her life changed for the better. Okay, what about it like inspires you as well? How would it be for your life to change as Diana's changed? So I think I would take it from the theory and to the practice and really anchor them to the end result, because this is what we're talking about, really increasing the incentive of getting there. Because sometimes if it's really far in the future, like it's really hard for people to keep the motivation. Like we want it now or not now, right? So if it's something that I need to do until, I don't know, next year, every day I need to train for that, it's really disconnected. So probably we need to have like smaller blocks that they're going to get there. But first we really need to understand what would it mean for them. And I love using scales as well. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you want to climb Mount Everest? No, I can't do it. I know you're saying that, but I want to know how much you actually want this. Oh, a 3. Well, actually, is it worth for us to have the conversation if it's only a 3 or it's a 7? Okay, what's stopping it from being a 10? So it really depends where they are. And what I do with this is really give them an awareness of what they're thinking, because as they're answering these type of questions, I believe they receive a lot of clarity. And once you have clarity, action becomes much more easier. It gets you unstuck. That's the reason why people, for example, they procrastinate it, or they delay, or they don't start something, and they're not quite clear what is the next step, and they're not quite clear if they want it or if they don't want it. So like once you process that all together, then I can't stop them in doing the action that they need to do.
Yeah, clarity is again a really important concept, and you've helped me a lot there understand something. However, I think that the tools with which you work, logic, rationality, a conversation where you ask a question that requires an answer, right? I think that I work with some clients who don't accept those tools. Now, I know there's a difference between psychiatry and coaching, but you would accept, maybe, let's discuss this, I'm challenging you again a little bit, that there's a lot of implicit assumptions that occur within the kind of conversations you're having with your clients, that have to be there for the thing to work. One is the acceptance that in a conversation, people have to respond reasonably, right? You say, why do you want to climb Mount Everest? Or you say, well, it logically follows that if you feel you can't climb Mount Everest, as long as you feel you can't climb, you keep insisting you can't climb, then you won't be able to climb it, right? And then there's a sense in which many clients don't accept the logic of that position. They somehow want you to get them to the top of Mount Everest, whatever they say, right? So there's a couple of assumptions. One is that they're going to have to do some work. They're going to have to make some changes. They're going to have to think differently. There's a whole raft of things that are implicit that I don't think clients accept. I think they often turn up expecting you to carry them piggyback style to the top of Mount Everest. So I'm wondering how you cope with that, how you get these ideas over, that they're going to have to do work, and that they're going to have to make changes, and they're going to have to try to achieve clarity in their heads. What are your thoughts about that?
Yes. I did learn this the hard way, but I do spend a lot of time in the beginning of the relationship. And I have a chemistry session with people as well, and really making them understand what coaching is. So it's about finding solutions that you're willing to try. And if you're not going to do the work, I'm not going to be able to do the work for you. I did have people come to me say, I want you to motivate me. And I said, I'm not going to be able to motivate you, but I'm going to be able to inspire you to get motivated. So and that became a target for some of the sessions, and they had to go and look, find some like videos on YouTube that inspires them, so they could find the motivations, they can connect with that. So people that don't want to do the work, I think one of the common ways that I respond to this is explain that it's normal to be a bit skeptic about change, and it's quite uncomfortable for the brain to change the behavior, and it's a process. It takes at least 30 days, and like in the beginning they're going to have to put a bit more effort, and then it's going to get easier. And I would suggest an easy way in. So like, how uncomfortable are you finding this task that we said that it might be useful for you to do? So let's say if that's a 10, let's look at what 5 would look like. So it would be about like, if you're training to run for a marathon, like you wouldn't start running like the whole marathon from the beginning. You would probably space it out, I don't know, maybe in 2 years, maybe in half a year, depending on all the other conditions that you have. So I would believe them when they tell me that they want to achieve something. And then I would try to find ways in. And whenever they would be reluctant to do that, or not even try to to implement something, I would be on their side and I would explain what's happening in their brain and why they're pushing back on this. But like you just told me, so I would re-anchor them in their why and why they want to do this. And I would ask them, for example, if you would be a fly on the wall, what advice would you give? Or I don't know, I would try to find a friend that's been to a similar situation. Or sometimes what works really well, I play back to them. So I say, could you give me some advice? And then whatever they told me, for example, I want to quit my job, but I'm really afraid that I'm not going to have enough money or something. Everything that they told me, I do a bit of acting, and I play that. So they have to give me advice on what I need to do. And whatever they tell me, I'm just going to push back, but I'm afraid to do that. I don't think this is possible. I'm not going to do that. And they smile in the beginning, but I get to see them. They start giving themselves advice, because you have to get them detached from the situation, because if you're too close, like, you can't see it, you can only feel the fear about it.
Okay, that's brilliant. Again, I'm very impressed. You give me a lot of ideas, and I thought I couldn't learn anything new. However, again, I'm going to be challenging here a bit. You're very much,
Yeah.
in my opinion, and there's nothing wrong with this, most of the field is, in the realm of cognitions, in the realm of reasoning, right? Now, you will know there's a school of thought, the behaviorist school, which says that really, what people really need to do is go and perform an act. And if they could perform the action, then that produces change. So let's go to our famous Mount Everest example. Someone says, I can't get to the top of Mount Everest. So the behaviorist would say, okay, what hill do you think you can get to the top of, right? Let's nominate something you think you can do. And let's say they go, well, that hill over there, that's about 500 meters tall, I can get to the top of. And then you go, well, what about the one that's 700 meters tall? And then they go, no, I can't get to the top of that. And then you keep reducing the height till we get to a hill that is a bit beyond what they think they could do. Just a bit, right? But not massively so. And you get them to try and climb that hill, right? So there's two things involved here. The smallest step possible that's more than what you've done before, okay?
Yeah.
And the performance of an action, okay? And I think that is very interesting territory, because most of them can see that while they may say, oh, Mount Everest is too much, that they're in a weaker position to say the hill that's 700 meters too tall, but I could do 500 meters. They're in a weaker position to argue. And I also say, I'm not expecting you to get to the top, but just have a go, right? The have a go with a 700 meters hill, right, is more doable. Yeah. Anyway, what are your thoughts? You're not looking too happy with my proposition.
I think it's quite hard to push someone to do that. And being neurodiverse myself as well, if you tell me to climb that 700 mountain, there's no way I'm going to do that. If you let me have that idea, then there's a chance.
So very interesting. Okay, yeah.
So don't tell me what to do. Like, I have.
Yeah. How do I get you to have the idea? Yeah.
So I think in this situation, my approach to this, just if we're continuing the idea what we had before. So let's say that Mount Everest is a 10. I would ask you, what does a 1 mean to you? And then you would describe what a 1, or maybe I would ask you, how comfortable do you feel on a scale of 1 to 10 to do this 3? So basically, I would try to really, again, I would go back on the clarity. So understand, what is their 1, what is their 2, what is their 3? And then let's say they're 0, right? And let's just get them to do the 1. Then they would have to define what the 1 is. And then I would ask them, what is the first step they need to put in place for you to be able to be successful in doing that 1? And they would be the ones that they're going to do, what is the first step? Okay, can I check on you in 2 weeks that you've done this? Like, how do you want me to check on you and doing this? And then once they've done that step, they have a bit of confidence. I wish they could go directly to 5, but this is where, as a coach, I really have to hold the space, and they need to go in their own rhythm. I tend to be a bit more, like, I do tend to push them. So, like, do you think you could, what would a 2 look like? What's the first step you're going to do that? Do you want to try to do that? And they can tell you, that's too soon, maybe not now, or sometimes they're just going to go for it. But I think it's important for me to let them say what they want to do, and then check how can I help them in supporting them. So is it a phone call? Is it, I don't know, like more information or more inspiration onto that? So basically, sorry, to answer your question, it would be like, what does a 1 look to you? What is the first step that you need to do? What would help you to ensure that you're going to finish the 1 that you decided that it is? What extra steps can you do, like, to remove the blocks, so we can be sure that you're going to achieve the 1? And then we would go to 2, to 3, to 4, or maybe I'm going to say, are you have like which number do you want to go next to? Maybe they're not going to want to go to 2. Maybe they're going to want to go to 5. I had once this guy that came to tell me that he wants to be a president, and as a coach, a president, yeah, like as a coach, I can't tell him that I think that's silly. So we literally started working towards a plan for him to become a president. And then at one point he realized it's way too much work and he's not willing to make this investment of time and energy, and he's not doing that. So I held the space for him because you never know, right? What could happen. And we worked in that direction.
Okay, all right. I love the way you say you never know. You're so optimistic.
You never know.
Yeah.
You never know.
No, I mean,
know. Just some of the politicians, right? I'm not going to say anything, but some people, I wonder how they get into politics.
Okay, but let's just focus on this notion that a lot of therapists or coaches do a lot of talking, a lot of conversation, and they think that's coaching, right? I think it's the client going and performing the action, even if it's a small action, is the really important territory, right? So I think that often what happens is the conversation becomes a replacement for action. It looks like work's being done, but really all that's happening is people having a conversation as opposed to going and performing the action. That's the really important territory. And I also think that what people don't realize is the transformation occurs after the action, right? People are looking for the transformation. But people are looking for the transformation to occur. Help me feel like climbing to the top of Mount Everest, then I'll climb to the top of Mount Everest. Help me feel like climbing the 500-meter hill, then I'll go and do it. And it's usually the other way around. You do it, and then you feel like doing it. And I think we've got a real cultural problem that people use emotions as the fundamental driver as opposed to goals. The successful people on the planet are primarily driven by goals, right? And they don't care what disturbing or distressing emotions are coming down the railroad track. The goal is the number one thing. So you say to them, what do you want to do? They say, I want to get to the top of Mount Everest. And you say, well, listen, there will be suffering. You will get cold and rather tired. And that doesn't matter to them, right? The people who go, oh, I didn't realize there was going to be cold and suffering and tiredness. And I'm not sure if I can really do it, given all those facts. They're probably unlikely to make it because they're putting emotions before goals. I think there's a fundamental tension in life between emotions and goals. And you've got to make a decision which is more important. And I think people get confused. I like your idea of clarity. Anyway, you're looking horrified.
No, I was going to say, it's not my place to tell them that it's going to be cold there, it's going to be tiring and all of that, right? I can suggest for them to do some research and they can arrive to that conclusion. But I don't know, because particularly if we have a strong relationship, and I'm going to say that, maybe it's going to matter more and it could stop them from doing that. So for example, I ran away from home, and like looking back, I don't understand how I've done that. I left, like I went all the way to the US and then I went to the UK. I don't think I could replicate that. But because I didn't say to anyone, because I knew they're going to tell me like, don't do that. I think if I would have told someone and they would have walked me through the logical steps of getting into a university in England, being a Romanian and all of that, and having the money, because like the pound was much more stronger than the Romanian currency and all of that, it would have been impossible. So I would have never done it, right? So I think there's a lot of power in coaching, at least, in making sure that they're going to be prepared for it and think about what are the obstacles. And unless we're going into mentoring, I wouldn't tell them, maybe this is also going to be an obstacle. Maybe this is going to be an obstacle, because the moment that we put them into their focus, then they're going to bump into it. And actually, some of the things that I tell my clients is when you're driving, you're looking at the road, you're not looking at the trees. Like you have to keep your eyes in the direction that you're going in. And as things are coming in front of you, then we have to address them and remove them. But I really liked what you said in terms of the magic happens once you've done the act, and I completely agree with that. I think the coaching session is again about clarity and really understanding what is the first step that you can do between now and the next time that I'm going to see you, and then really assuring that they're going to do that. So put a system in place, and it differs from person to person how you implement that. But I couldn't agree more that the magic happens between the sessions. Sometimes they get reassured by just having a body double. So sometimes like some of the homework that they need to do and perform the action happens the night before at 12 o'clock, but it doesn't matter. They still done it right before we're meeting the next time. And I get to refuse clients that basically that they say that they want to do something, and then when they have to do it, they don't implement it because like they're not doing their part of the work. So this is not what we agreed. We agreed that we're gonna together agree what the actions that he or she are going to take, and if anything like changes and they're not doing their part of the game, then there's no game.
Yeah, but I want to stay talking about this action thing because again, I find most coaches, and it's refreshing talking to you that you are agreeing with me that you talked about the magic, which again is a powerful word. You're a very inspiring person to talk to. Happens between sessions. I'm saying the action is the territory, and it doesn't matter even if people perform actions that aren't necessarily the right actions, as long as they're in the realm of actions and pushing themselves into that territory, they're likely to transform and be better. Yeah. So I maybe trivial example, but I'm going to give it anyway. I've just come back from Dubai. I went to see a client. I was invited to Dubai to see a client, and it was a weekend, so they only wanted to be seen for 2 hours, and they paid for me to fly out there, and I arrived on Saturday morning and left Sunday night. And because the consultation was for 2 hours, there was a lot of other time. Okay. Now, I arranged to go and have a golf lesson for 2 hours on Saturday and a golf lesson for 2 hours on Sunday. Now, I'm terrible at golf, but I want to be better at golf. Okay. I'm picking a golf lesson with a golf coach. I have no idea whether they're any good. I'm not going to meet them probably ever again. Okay. But I'm gambling. Okay.
Yeah.
But it's better to be in the territory of the gamble of performing the action than sitting around just feeling sorry about the fact that that I'm not very good at golf. It just so happened the golf pro was amazing. I think it was one of the best golf pros I've had. Okay. And I had a fantastic 2 hour lesson and a fantastic 2 hour lesson on Sunday. And I feel re-inspired to have another go at golf because I was actually rather disheartened that I was thinking of giving up golf. So I'm not trying to big myself up, but I want to unpack. I want to unpack that I was disheartened by golf, thought I'm no good, but I decided to have a lesson and it could have been disastrous, right? And it might have been disastrous. But my point is always be in the realm of having a go at an action that takes you into a journey into the territory. And it is likely that things will work better for you as a result. You're looking skeptical about that point.
No. I fully agree with you. And you're likely, you've done that because you've learned in the past that this is successful to you, and a client or a patient wouldn't do this.
Not always, but generally speaking, it's a better idea to do it.
Belief. It's a belief there, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Conviction.
So I fully believe the same thing, and what I explain to my clients and to get them to try things, I tell them to imagine a GPS. I mean, I'm useless with direction. So I depend on my phone. I go on my city mapper. I've been in London for 15 years. I still have to put things in city mapper to get around London, right? So as I start walking, it tells me, you're going in the opposite direction. Therefore, I need to change direction. I think it's similar with action. So like, as you start going in a direction and you know kind of where you want to be going, you can start, you can tell if you're going in the opposite direction, if you need to take the next left, or you need to readjust, or you're on the right track. So they need to perform the action and learn from that action in regards to the goal where they want to go. And I loved the way that you were saying that you just took the action and you took a risk. I tell them that it's okay to change your goal, but like for now, we need to set a goal if we want to go to Dubai or London or Romania, for example, because we need to put some context into the action that you're performing. It could be as little, I just want to explore, I want to experience new things. Like it doesn't necessarily need to be I want to make more money or I don't want to have burnout. But like you need to have you need to know what success looks like. I think particularly in coaching, one of the things that I spend some time with them is really giving them a bit of clarity. What does success look like for them? Because it's something so personal. Like it's not, people say they want more money. Okay, then what do you want to do with that money? Imagine you have like the $10 million or the 10 million like pounds. How are you going to use that? And Simon Sinek has an amazing analogy to this. He's saying that money is like fuel, gas in a car. And you don't buy a car just so you could keep fuel into it. You buy a car because you want to get places. And indeed, like the fuel helps you. So the car is going to be able to move in a direction, but you have to be the one setting a direction. And I believe that success, again, like it's about, okay, you're going to get the money. Where is that money going to take you, and what does success look to you?
Okay, but I want to go back and torture my golf analogies for a bit longer. So as I'm
Okay.
addressing the ball with the club and the coach is looking at me for the first time, I'm feeling really bad and anxious because I'm thinking after I hit the ball and it doesn't go anywhere and it's a terrible shot, he's going to say, "How long have you been playing golf? How many lessons have you had?" And he's going to give me some feedback along the lines that I really should give up, and I'm pretty hopeless. I'm sitting there very anxious, right? I'm exposing myself to the risk
Mm.
of pretty calamitous feedback. Okay. Um, as it happened, he was good and he gave me some tips. He said, "You're doing this wrong." He said, "I'm only going to tell you one thing I want you to correct," which obviously was a hint. There was a lot of things I needed correcting. But he said, "I just want us to work on one thing today," which we did. And I began to hit the ball much better. But what I'm trying to make is that people have to be moved into territory they don't want to be in, right? Because by definition, they wouldn't need coaching or they'd be cured if they had done the thing they don't want to do. So there's something around that
But
that
they,
seems to
they
be
they
really
don't
important.
have to. They don't have to. They need to choose to.
Yes, okay, I agree. I chose to go there, but there was something
Yeah.
about me, my value system, that says, look, I believe ultimately that if I'm going to stand any chance at this golf thing, I've got to maybe try a different coach because I've tried lots of coaches and
Hmm.
it's not working. So I'm trying something, and that trying something is usually stressful. Otherwise, people would find it easier to try. So I suppose what we're focusing on is the overcoming of difficulty that people need help with, and they go to therapists, and therapists can help a bit, but they can't remove the difficulty. We can help
Yeah.
people overcome the difficulty, but we can't
Yeah.
take the difficulty away. So the analogy I like to give is everyone comes to see me, and what they're basically going to do is complain about the world. The world's an unpleasant place for some reason. They've got some terrible boss, some terrible wife or husband, terrible kids, whatever.
Mm.
And what they really want is for me to change the world. They want me to go
Mm.
out and change the world. And if the
Yeah.
world's different, then they'll be okay. What they don't understand is that I can't change the world, but I can help you change. And when you change, then the world will be different.
Exactly.
Anyway, what are your
Exactly.
thoughts about that point?
I want to go back to your example with the golf, and I want to
Mhm.
try to do some strength spotting, and you tell me if
Okay.
I'm right.
Okay. Yeah.
So I think you get a lot of energy from learning and growing. So you're
Mhm.
always looking for opportunities to learn and grow. I
Mhm.
think you get a lot of energy from being resilient. So although something is challenging, it's almost like, oh, this is not gonna put me down. Like I'll show you, almost like who's the boss around here.
Mhm.
And I think that, I mean, there's obviously something more about that, but the strategy piece in a way, it's like you're trying your like different angles. So there's something around variety there as well. And I would
Mhm.
say in this situation, this worked for you because these are the things that energize you and motivate you, and they give you the power to do this. If you would put me in the same situation, you should try. You should see me try to ski. Like it's very different. Like I cannot empathize with the way that you described it. It couldn't be. We don't relate in that perspective, right? So this is coming back to the strength. Like everyone has different things that give them energy and give them motivation, and it's very important to find what those buttons are for each and every person and see how can you align them
Mhm.
in order to
Mhm.
motivate them to climb the Mount Everest, to
Mhm.
play the golf, to learn something new, because there's no one size fits all. That's what I find.
Hmm. Okay, but you've identified a strength. Well, let me tell you something else as we're doing confession here. I hate being bad at stuff, right? So I
Okay.
hate being useless. And I have thrown a lot of resources at golf, and I can't be very good at it because I'm not as good as I ought to be given the number of lessons. So I hate that, but I still believe that it's down to me. And I believe if I throw enough energy and try something else, ultimately I can make a difference. But I don't like being bad. I didn't when he said to me after the second lesson, he said, "Tomorrow we're going to go out on the golf course." There was a panic moment there, when I felt like saying, "Do we have to?" But I thought he's the coach. If he's insisting that we're going to go on the course, I don't like the public humiliation element of being on the course.
Mm.
And when I hit the ball for the first time on the course, it actually sailed beautifully into the air. And he said immediately, "What are you getting so stressed about?" Because I was obviously and he kept saying, "You're a psychiatrist. I don't understand how you get so stressed." Um, anyway,
Oh, I hate it when
uh,
they do that. You're a
yeah,
psychologist, you're a psychiatrist, you're
yeah.
supposed to know this. I'm like,
But what I'm trying to say is, you mentioned my strengths, but I'm talking about, in a way, the negative side of motivation. I hate being terrible. I'm competitive. I want to win. I don't like losing. I don't like being bad. So that is taking me into this journey of having a go. is the point I'm trying to make.
It's helping you, right? Like even like for a narcissist, for example, that's
Yes, which is
a really
obviously
strong
to some extent. Yeah,
No,
go
no,
on.
no, no, no. I wasn't making a link, but
Yeah.
like even like the negative traits that someone has could be a motivator for positive action. Like we don't know what's behind the scenes in there, right? Like it's a very personal story to each and every one of us. But like some of the questions probably that I would ask you, because you said some negative things there, and although I wouldn't explore like where are they coming from, I would ask you what do they mean to you. So like what meaning did you attribute to this? So and maybe it's about changing the meaning that you formed in your head, but it would also have to be something we need to put in balance, because if it serves you, so if it acts like a engine to push you forward in the direction that you want to, we're just going to acknowledge that this is what's happening there, and we're just going to keep in check if it's draining you of energy somewhere else, maybe in your self-esteem, or maybe it can lead you to burnout or anything like that. But if there's no danger, the majority of things that push us forward are, I don't want to say wounds, but they're things that are not perfect in the background.
Yeah.
Anxieties,
Okay.
probably.
So it's been lovely talking to you, and we're running out of time a little bit. So I want to talk a bit about ADHD coaching, because that's something that you also kind of like specialize in. So Roxana Cardos, business psychologist and coach, tell us a bit about ADHD coaching and what that is.
Yep. So particularly for adults, it's like ADHD is a new space, and they're discovering lots of things at the moment and many definitions. But the one that I would like to bring to your attention is that ADD, so attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, is a unique brain wiring which requires engaged interest with a clear, purposeful intention in order to activate and access attention, so an individual can manage the brain executive function. In lame terms put, they have an interest-based neurosystem. If they're interested in something, they're going to be able to hyper-focus. If they're not interested in something, they can get fired. They can, I don't know, get into a lot of trouble. And that's what they're renowned for. But actually, quite a few entrepreneurs that are really successful have ADHD. I think my favorite one is Richard Branson and Simon Sinek. They have ADHD, and obviously they're clearly not stupid. They're able to perform at a really high level. So yeah, I love working with neurodiverse minds. I'm a dyslexic myself, so I know how it feels like to be a bit different than the rest of the world. And I believe that the strengths fit straight in there. I think it's about unlocking your strengths to get to the next level, and obviously building on the experience that I had in my past. I find that this fits like a glove.
Okay, but you've used some terms there. Many people watching or listening may not be aware of what the terms mean. So you mentioned the word neurodiverse. Tell us a bit about what that means.
Neurodiverse means that your brain works differently than I can't remember now the name, neurotypical brain. So examples of neurodiverse brains are people with dyslexia, people with autism, people with ADHD. And because they didn't, they weren't as much understood, they were classed as like wrong brains. There's something wrong with them, so it's seen as a deficit. But the way that I like to explain this to people is like when you're blind, so when one of your senses is being taken away from you, there's other senses that need to step in to be able to support you. So in my example with dyslexia, the fact that I read and write, it takes me longer to process information in that way, in that format, meant that I really had to rely on my communication. So I made a career out of talking to people. So you're going to see me first do a video, and then I'm going to write something. So sorry, coming back to the neurodiverse, it means that the brain doesn't operate in the neurotypical way. So like, what would you expect? So like the developmental of the brain is a bit different for the neurodiverse brains.
But the reason why neurodiverse is the term, and we're rapidly running out of time, so we have to be very fast. Roxana Cardos. So the reason neurodiverse is used is to try to indicate that it's not a deficit. There's not something wrong with your brain. It's just different, right? That's the idea that people have come up with, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah. Okay. So in the short time we got left, we've got about a minute left. People may have ADHD and not know they have it. There's no blood test for it, and it's maybe a lot more common than people realize. So
yes,
that's an interesting thing, isn't it? Could you say a bit about that?
Yeah.
How would people self-diagnose, or why should people begin to think that ADHD might be relevant to them? what sort of clues might they have that would suggest that
you
they could
shouldn't self-diagnose. I think you can find tests online to check to see if the traits that you're having, if they are ADHD related. I think there are so many like free ones that you should do. And you should always go see a psychiatrist to get a diagnosis. Some of the, I mean, there's different types of ADHD, and we don't have time now to talk about this now, but it doesn't necessarily mean hyperactivity. It can also be just hyperactivity in the brain. So like you would look from the outside that you don't have ADHD, but actually your brain is going on all the time, so you can't switch off. There's so many things to say. I can't say them in 1 minute.
All right. Well, Roxana Cardos, thank you very much indeed. Business psychologist, coach, and also an ADHD coach. Thank you very much indeed for talking to us today. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.